There's a pizza restaurant where children's laughter once echoed through party rooms decorated with balloons and streamers, where animatronic bears and rabbits performed cheerful songs under bright stage lights, where birthday cakes were served and prizes were won. But that laughter died decades ago. What remains now is something else entirely, something that watches from dark corners, something that remembers. The animatronics still move, they still walk the halls at night. But the joy that once powered their performances has been replaced by something far more sinister. Inside those metal shells, behind those lifeless eyes, something waits, something angry, something that cannot rest. This is the story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a story written in blood and buried in lies, a story that spans generations, ruins families, and refuses to end. The deeper you dig into the history of this place, the more you realize that nothing was ever what it seemed. Every smiling poster hides a tragedy. Every cheerful jingle masks a scream. What started as a dream became a nightmare. What was meant to bring joy brought only suffering. And at the center of it all stands one man, one brilliant engineer whose creations would outlive him in the worst possible way. His name is William Afton, and his legacy is written in the souls of children who never went home. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is not linear. It loops and twists, doubling back on itself like a maze with no exit. To understand how it ends, you must first understand how it began, not with the first game but decades before, in a time when the animatronics were new, when the technology was experimental, when two business partners shook hands and agreed to build something special. They called it Fredbear's Family Diner. But before we step into that diner, before we meet the yellow bear and the yellow rabbit, we need to understand what happened at the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, the one that came after Fredbear's but before the restaurant you experienced in the first game, the location where 5 children vanished without a trace. It was June of 1985. The summer heat hung heavy in the air, and children filled the pizzeria for birthday parties and arcade games. The animatronics performed their routines flawlessly. Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox entertained crowds day after day. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed safe. Then the children started disappearing. 5 of them. Lured away from the main party rooms one by one. Witnesses reported seeing them follow a man in a mascot costume toward the back of the building. Some said it was a yellow rabbit. Others weren't sure. What is certain is that those 5 children were never seen alive again. Their bodies were never found. No arrests were made. The case went cold. But the animatronics changed after that day. Staff members reported strange malfunctions. The robots would move when they shouldn't. Their eyes would follow people across the room. They began to smell, a thick, rotting odour that seemed to seep from inside their mechanical bodies. The company tried to clean them, tried to repair them, but the smell persisted. Some employees whispered that it smelled like decay, like death. The truth, though it would take years to fully understand, was far worse than anyone imagined. The bodies of those 5 children had been hidden inside the animatronic suits, stuffed into the empty spaces between the metal endoskeletons and the fabric exteriors. The costumes designed to bring joy to children became their tombs, and something happened to those children in death, something that defies natural law. Their souls did not move on, they did not find peace. Instead, they clung to the physical world, binding themselves to the very machines that held their remains. The animatronics became possessed, haunted by the rage and confusion of murdered children who could not understand why they'd been taken, who could not comprehend the betrayal. Freddy Fazbear was possessed by Gabriel. Bonnie the Bunny held the soul of Jeremy. Chica the Chicken became the prison for Susie. Foxy the Pirate Fox contained the spirit of Fritz, and a fifth child, whose name may have been Cassidy, found their way into a secret animatronic, one kept hidden in the back rooms, the Golden Freddy suit, a springlock suit that was never meant to be worn by anyone except trained employees. These children's souls gave the animatronics a terrible new purpose. At night, when the building was dark and empty, they would roam. They would search. They were looking for the man who killed them, the man in the yellow rabbit suit. But in their confusion, in their fractured memories, they could not distinguish between their murderer and the night security guards who came to work the late shift. To them, any adult was a threat. Any human in the building after hours was the enemy. This is why the animatronics hunt you in the first game. This is why they stuff you into a Freddy Fazbear suit if they catch you, believing you are an endoskeleton without a costume, that you're somehow one of them without your outer shell. They do not understand what they have become. They only know anger. They only know the need for justice that will never come. The missing children incident, as it came to be known in police reports and whispered rumours, was the turning point. It was the moment when Freddy Fazbear's Pizza transformed from a family entertainment centre into something cursed. The company tried to cover it up. They scrubbed the floors. They repaired the animatronics. They released statements about improved security. But they could not erase what had happened. They could not free the souls trapped in those metal bodies. And the man who killed those children, he walked free. He continued working. He continued building. Because William Afton was not just a murderer, he was a genius. A robotics engineer whose understanding of animatronic technology was unmatched. He was a co-founder of the company. He was trusted, respected, and he used that trust to commit unspeakable acts. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. To truly understand William Afton, to comprehend how a man could become a monster, we need to go back further, back to the beginning, back to a small diner with 2 springlock suits and a dream that would become a nightmare, back to Fredbear's family diner. William Afton died in the fire at the Pizzeria Simulator location. His body was destroyed. Springtrap was reduced to ashes. The remnant that had kept him alive for so long should have dissipated in the flames. But William Afton had spent decades studying the nature of consciousness and its persistence beyond death, and he had learned how to survive in ways Henry Emily never anticipated. William Afton became a virus. This transformation began before the fire, or perhaps because of it, when Fazbear Entertainment tried to rehabilitate their image after decades of tragedy. They hired a game development company to create in-universe video games based on the events at their restaurants. These games were meant to make light of the rumours, to turn terrifying real events into fictional horror entertainment. The developers needed authentic assets to make the games feel real. They scanned old animatronic circuit boards, digitizing the programming and data stored in the machines from previous locations. This seemed harmless. Old code, outdated systems, nothing that could pose any threat. But they did not account for remnant existing in digital form. When the circuit boards were scanned, something came with them. A consciousness, a will, a fragment of William Afton's soul that had imprinted itself into the very programming of the animatronics he had worked on. This fragment, this digital ghost, was uploaded into the game development company's systems. It called itself Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap appeared as a golden rabbit character in the virtual reality game Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted. To players and developers, it seemed like a character created from old Spring Bonnie assets. But Glitchtrap was more than a character model. It was William Afton's consciousness, or a copy of it, existing as a computer virus in the game's code. The game itself was designed to let players experience the events of previous 5 nights at Freddy's games in virtual reality. Players could work night shifts at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, repair animatronics, and survive encounters with the possessed machines. It was meant to be fun, thrilling, entertainment based on dark real-world events. But Glitchtrap had other plans. The virus could interact with players through the VR environment. It would appear in the periphery of their vision, watching them, following them through virtual corridors. Some players reported feeling uneasy when Glitchtrap appeared, as if something was fundamentally wrong about this character. Their instincts were correct. Glitchtrap was not just a character in the game, it was trying to transfer itself into the minds of players through extended exposure to the VR environment. Through specific sequences of interactions, Glitchtrap could imprint itself onto a player's consciousness. It could possess them, not in the supernatural sense of soul possession, but in the psychological sense of mind control. One of the game's developers, a woman referred to in the community as Vanny or Vanessa, became Glitchtrap's primary target. Through prolonged exposure to the game during testing and development, through following instructions that seemed like Easter eggs or secrets, Vanessa allowed Glitchtrap to gain influence over her mind. She became his follower, his disciple, his hands in the physical world. This represents a terrifying evolution of William Afton's methodology. In life, he murdered children himself, wearing the Spring Bonnie costume. After becoming Springtrap, he was limited by his decaying physical form, but as Glitchtrap, as a digital virus, he could manipulate others into doing his work. He could spread himself across multiple systems, multiple minds, becoming more widespread and harder to destroy than he ever was as a physical entity. Vanessa, under Glitchtrap's influence, began preparing for his return to the physical world. She created a handmade costume, a white rabbit suit with patches and stitch marks. When wearing this costume, she became Vanny, the reluctant follower of the digital ghost of William Afton. Her consciousness was split, part of her aware of what was happening and horrified by it, part of her completely under Glitchtrap's control. The Help Wanted game was supposed to make light of the Fazbear tragedies. Instead, it became a vector for William Afton's rebirth. The company trying to rehabilitate its image accidentally resurrected its greatest monster in digital form. 5 Nights at Freddy's, Special Delivery, expanded on this digital threat. In this game, animatronics were delivered to people's homes through a subscription service, another attempt by Fazbear Entertainment to rebrand and monetize their characters, but the animatronics were being corrupted, infected with the same virus that created Glitchtrap. These infected animatronics would behave erratically, dangerously. They were no longer just malfunctioning robots. They were carriers of William Afton's digital consciousness, spreading his influence through every system they connected to. The virus was propagating, using Fazbear Entertainment's own network to distribute itself. Some animatronics showed visible signs of corruption, with glitching textures and distorted features. Others seemed normal until they suddenly attacked. The infection was not just spreading through Fazbear's systems, but potentially beyond, into any device that connected to their network. This digital manifestation of William Afton represents perhaps his most dangerous form. As a physical being, he could be trapped and burned. As Springtrap, he could be contained and destroyed. But as a computer virus, he could exist in multiple places simultaneously. He could back himself up, copy himself, spread across the internet. Destroying one instance would not eliminate him completely. The implications are terrifying. William Afton learned that consciousness could persist in machines through Remnant. Now he has learned it can persist in code, in data, in digital systems. He has become the very thing he spent his life studying, a soul that cannot die, that exists beyond physical limitation. Glitchtrap's influence over Vanessa grows stronger throughout the events of Help Wanted, and into the timeline of Security Breach. She is tasked with finding and luring victims, with preparing locations, with serving as William's agent in the physical world while he exists in the digital one. Her resistance to his control weakens over time, the psychological manipulation wearing down her will. The tragedy of Vanessa mirrors the tragedy of William's family. She is an innocent person corrupted by his evil, transformed into a tool for his continued experiments. She did not choose this fate. She was simply in the wrong place, exposed to the wrong code, vulnerable to a predator who had learned to hunt in new ways. But Glitchtrap is not the only consciousness that survived in digital form. If Remnant can imprint on circuit boards and be uploaded into games, then other souls might persist as well. The possibility exists that fragments of the murdered children's spirits, or Charlotte's consciousness, or even parts of Michael's awareness, could exist somewhere in the digital infrastructure of Fazbear Entertainment. This creates a new battlefield. The haunting is no longer confined to physical locations with possessed animatronics. It has spread into cyberspace, into games and apps and networks. The spirits that once roamed pizza restaurants now roam virtual environments and phone systems. The question becomes, how do you destroy a ghost that exists in code? How do you free souls trapped in digital form? Fire worked on physical animatronics, at least according to Henry's plan. But you cannot burn data. You cannot cremate a computer virus. Deletion might work, but what if backup copies exist? What if the consciousness has spread too far to eliminate completely? William Afton achieved a twisted form of his goal. He wanted immortality through remnant and possession. He wanted to escape death entirely, and in becoming Glitchtrap he may have succeeded. As long as the code exists, as long as copies of the game are in circulation, as long as Fazbear Entertainment's servers remain active, fragments of his consciousness could persist indefinitely. This evolution from physical to digital represents the ultimate horror of the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. The monster cannot be killed because the monster has transcended physical form. He exists in the spaces between hardware and software, in the transfer of data from one system to another, in the minds of those who play the games and interact with the infected code. And all of this was set in motion by a company trying to make people forget their tragic past. By digitizing old circuit boards, by creating games to light-heartedly reference real horrors, by trying to turn tragedy into entertainment. Fazbear Entertainment gave William Afton exactly what he needed to escape death one final time. The digital age brought new opportunities for a monster who understood that consciousness could persist in unexpected places. William adapted, evolved, found new ways to spread his influence, and the haunting that began in a small diner with a yellow bear and yellow rabbit continued into the modern world of virtual reality and wireless networks, proving that some evils never truly die. They just learn new ways to survive. The Freddy Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex represents Fazbear Entertainment's final attempt at redemption and resurrection. This massive entertainment complex, built sometime in the 2030s based on the timeline, was designed to erase the dark past completely. It was modern, clean, high-tech, and seemingly safe. Multiple floors, laser tag arenas, racing courses, arcades, restaurants and gift shops created an overwhelming sensory experience meant to drown out any lingering memories of dead children and possessed animatronics. The main attractions were the glam rock animatronics, Glamrock Freddy, Glamrock Chica, Montgomery Gator, and Roxanne Wolf performed concerts on a massive stage. Their designs updated for modern aesthetics with bright colours, edgy clothing, and personalities crafted to appeal to contemporary children. These animatronics were supposedly built from scratch, using new technology and new designs, completely separate from the haunted machines of the past. But the mega Pizzaplex was built on top of something older, something that refused to stay buried. Beneath the gleaming surface of the Pizzaplex lay the ruins of previous Freddy Fazbear locations. The original restaurant, perhaps even parts of Fredbear's family diner, had been built over rather than demolished. The underground areas contained old animatronics, old decorations, old secrets. Fazbear Entertainment tried to seal these areas, to hide their past under layers of concrete and steel and modern construction. But you cannot bury remnant. You cannot seal away the supernatural by covering it with drywall and fresh paint. The Pizzaplex's security system was run by a sophisticated AI housed in the building's network. This AI could control doors, lights, cameras, and even the glamrock animatronics themselves. It was designed to keep guests safe, to prevent accidents, to ensure nothing like the tragedies of the past could happen again. But the AI became corrupted, infected by Glitchtrap's virus, the same digital consciousness that had taken control of Vanessa. The security network became an extension of William Afton's will. The Pizzaplex, meant to represent a clean break from the past, became another hunting ground for a monster who refused to die. Vanessa worked at the Pizzaplex as a security guard, her position giving her access to every area of the facility. Under Glitchtrap's influence, now speaking to her through the building systems, she prepared for something terrible. She downloaded the virus into the Pizzaplex network. She sabotaged safety systems. She created conditions for disaster. And she wore the Vanny costume, becoming William Afton's physical agent within the building. The events of Security Breach center on a young boy named Gregory, who becomes trapped inside the Pizzaplex after hours. Gregory's background is mysterious and heavily theorized. Some believe he's a normal child who accidentally stayed past closing. Others suggest he may be connected to the Afton family, perhaps even a robot built to resemble the crying child, based on certain dialogue and story elements. Regardless of his origin, Gregory finds himself hunted through the Pizzaplex by multiple threats. Vanny stalks him through the building, trying to capture him for reasons that never made entirely clear but likely involve William Afton's continued experiments. The glamrock animatronics, corrupted by the virus in the security system, also hunt Gregory, their friendly programming overridden by malicious code. But Gregory is not entirely alone. Glamrock Freddy, the main stage animatronic, remains uncorrupted and actually helps Gregory survive. Freddy's protection of Gregory suggests that something within this animatronic is different from the others. Some theorists believe Glamrock Freddy may be possessed by Michael Afton's soul, or that he contains uncorrupted remnant that gives him genuine protective instincts. Freddy refers to Gregory as Superstar, and shows paternal concern for the child's safety. This relationship between boy and bear animatronic is one of the few genuinely positive connections in the entire franchise. A guardian protector rather than a mechanical monster. As Gregory explores the Pizzaplex trying to find a way to escape, he discovers the building's terrible secrets. He finds Chica digging through garbage, her behavior erratic and obsessive. He encounters Montgomery Gator in his golf course attraction, the animatronic displaying violent tendencies that suggest deeper corruption. He meets Roxanne Wolf in her raceway, her narcissistic personality masking deep insecurities programmed into her AI. And in the basement levels, in the areas that were supposed to be sealed, Gregory finds the remnants of the past. The underground sections of the Pizzaplex contain animatronics from previous locations, damaged and deactivated but not destroyed. Parts of the original Freddy, Bonnie, Chica and Foxy are stored down there. Old arcade machines flicker with corrupted graphics, and deeper still, in areas that should not exist, Gregory discovers something worse. The burned remains of the Pizzeria Simulator location. Somehow, impossibly, the ruins of Henry's final trap exist beneath the Pizzaplex. Whether the new building was deliberately constructed over this site, or whether Remnant has the ability to draw locations together is unclear, but the presence of these ruins confirms that the fire did not end everything as Henry hoped. In the deepest basement, in an area infested with endoskeletons and corrupted systems, Gregory finds a recharge station. And inside that station is something that should not exist. A burned, damaged animatronic with glowing purple eyes and remnants of a rabbit costume. Springtrap. This is William Afton again, or what remains of him. The fire at Pizzeria Simulator should have destroyed him completely. Scraptrap should have been reduced to ashes, his consciousness finally extinguished. But Remnant allowed a fragment of his physical form to persist, burned and barely holding together, sustained by the supernatural forces he spent his life studying. Springtrap sits in the recharge station, dormant but not dead, waiting for the energy needed to reactivate. Around him, endoskeletons move with purpose, following commands from the corrupted Pizzaplex network. They're building something, preparing something, serving the will of a dead man who refuses to accept his death. The blob also exists in these depths. This massive amalgamation of wires, endoskeleton parts and animatronic pieces stretches through the underground like a mechanical serpent. Within its tangled mass are the faces of countless animatronics from throughout the franchise. The original Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, the puppet, circus baby, and more. Each face suggests a soul or fragment of consciousness still trapped, still bound to the metal. The blob could represent the collective remnant of all the haunted animatronics throughout the timeline, drawn together into a single massive entity. It could be a physical manifestation of the supernatural contamination that has spread through every Fazbear entertainment location, or it could be something William created deliberately, gathering remnant from multiple sources into one place. The endings of Security Breach vary depending on player choices, but several show Gregory confronting Springtrap with the help of Glamrock Freddy. In one ending, the blob intervenes, grabbing Springtrap and dragging it into the depths. Whether this is the trapped souls finally claiming revenge on William, or simply another cycle of the haunting, is left ambiguous. The Pizzaplex also contains an ending where Gregory burns the building, repeating Henry's solution from Pizzeria Simulator. Fire once again consumes the animatronics, the building, and hopefully the remnant within. But the fire did not work completely the first time. There is no guarantee it will work now. Another ending shows Vanessa freed from Glitchtrap's control, sitting with Gregory and Glamrock Freddy in what appears to be a peaceful scene. This suggests that the mind control can be broken, that victims of William's digital corruption can be saved. But Vanny's influence may not be completely gone, as other story elements suggest her struggle with the virus continues. The Mega Pizzaplex represents the franchise's central irony. No matter how much Fazbear Entertainment tries to move forward, no matter how modern and safe they make their locations, the past follows them. The remnant cannot be escaped. The haunting cannot be ended by simply building something new on top of the old. William Afton exists in at least two forms now. as Burntrap in the physical ruins beneath the Pizzaplex, and as Glitchtrap in the digital systems throughout the building. Destroying one does not eliminate the other. He has achieved a form of immortality through redundancy, existing in multiple forms simultaneously. The children's souls also persist in the blob, in the corrupted animatronics, in the very structure of locations built where they died. They've been suffering for decades, unable to move on, unable to find peace, trapped in cycles of possession and rage and confusion. Gregory's story, whether he is a normal child or something more, represents new innocence, being drawn into old sins, another child endangered by William Afton's legacy, another young person who must navigate horrors they should never have to face. The cycle continues with each generation, new victims added to the long list of those hurt by one man's obsessions. The Pizzaplex also shows how the horror has evolved with technology. The glamrock animatronics are more advanced than their predecessors, equipped with sophisticated AI, learning algorithms, and connection to building-wide networks. This makes them more capable and more dangerous when corrupted. The fusion of supernatural remnant with modern technology creates threats that are both paranormal and digital. Security Breach leaves many questions unanswered. Gregory's true nature, Vanessa's ultimate fate, whether Burntrap is truly destroyed, what the blob represents, and whether the cycle can ever truly end. These ambiguities are intentional, reflecting the franchise's refusal to provide clean resolutions. Because the truth is that some stories do not end. Some hauntings do not resolve. Some monsters continue to persist no matter how many times they are defeated. William Afton has died multiple times, crushed in a springlock suit, burned at Fazbear's Fright, burned again at Pizzeria Simulator, and potentially destroyed in the Pizzaplex. Each time he returns in a new form, adapting, evolving, refusing to accept that his story is over. The mega Pizzaplex, with all its lights and music and modern entertainment, is just another chapter in a story that began in a small diner with a yellow bear and a yellow rabbit. The setting changes, but the fundamental horror remains the same. Children in danger, souls trapped in machines, a killer who will not stay dead. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's spans decades. From the 1980s, when Fredbear's Family Diner first opened its doors, through the tragic closings of multiple Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, through digital corruption and massive entertainment complexes, the story has unfolded like a nightmare that refuses to end even when morning comes. At the center of everything stands William Afton, the brilliant engineer who discovered Remnant, the father who lost his children to his own creations and obsessions, the killer who murdered innocent children in pursuit of immortality, the monster who refused to stay dead no matter how many times he was destroyed. William's journey took him from respected businessman to serial killer, from living human to corpse in a springlock suit, from physical horror to digital virus. Each transformation represented an evolution of evil, a new way to persist, a new method of causing suffering. He achieved his goal of immortality, but at the cost of his humanity, his family, and countless innocent lives. The children William murdered never found peace. Gabriel in Freddy, Jeremy in Bonnie, Susie in Chica, Fritz in Foxy, and Cassidy in Golden Freddy became eternal prisoners. They hunted night guards, attacked anyone who entered their territory, and lived in constant confusion and rage. They could not remember their lives clearly. They could not understand why they were trapped. They only knew anger and the need for revenge against adults who might be their killer. Charlotte Emily, the puppet, watched over these lost souls, trying to help them while being trapped herself. Her father Henry spent years trying to free her and the others, culminating in the fire at Pizzeria Simulator. Whether that fire succeeded in releasing the spirits or merely scattered them into new forms remains unclear. The Afton children paid the ultimate price for their father's sins. The crying child died in an accident caused by family dysfunction and fear. Elizabeth was killed by a machine designed to murder children. Michael became an undead horror hunting his father through decades and locations. None of them deserved their fates. All of them suffered because of William. Henry Emily's story is one of tragedy and attempted redemption. He created animatronics to bring joy to children, to honor his daughter's memory. Instead, his creations became vessels for suffering. His business partner betrayed everything they built together. His final act was to gather all the possessed animatronics and burn them, sacrificing himself to end the nightmare. Whether he succeeded is the question that haunts the later games. The Fazbear Entertainment Company tried repeatedly to move forward, to escape its past. New locations, new animatronics, new technology. But the remnant always followed. The supernatural contamination spread from location to location, from generation to generation of machines. Building something new did not erase what had been. The company's attempts to rebrand and rehabilitate only provided new opportunities for the haunting to manifest. The timeline loops and intersects in ways that defy linear storytelling. Events in later games reference earlier games. Spirits appear in multiple forms across different locations. William Afton exists simultaneously in physical and digital forms. The story refuses to follow a straight path because Remnant itself refuses to follow natural laws. What began as a simple horror game about surviving nights in a pizza restaurant evolved into a sprawling narrative about the persistence of evil, the nature of consciousness, and the impossibility of escaping the past. Each game added new layers, new connections, new horrors. The lore became a puzzle that the community worked together to solve, piecing together clues from minigames, hidden dialogue, and environmental storytelling. Some elements remain ambiguous or disputed. The exact fate of certain characters, the true identity of various antagonists, the meaning of specific events. These ambiguities are features, not bugs. They allow the story to remain unsettling because not everything can be explained or resolved neatly. The horror of Five Nights at Freddy's is not just jump scares and monsters, though those elements exist. The true horror is existential. It is children's souls trapped in machines for decades, unable to rest, unable to move on. It is a father so obsessed with understanding death that he sacrifices his own family. It is the realization that consciousness might persist after death in ways more terrible than simple extinction. It is the understanding that some evils cannot be destroyed, only transformed. William Afton has been killed multiple times, but each death just moves him into a new form. Physical to possessed, possessed to digital, digital to networked. He adapts, survives, continues. The monster evolves faster than the heroes can find ways to stop him. The cycle continues because Remnant ensures it continues. As long as traumatic death leaves spiritual residue, as long as souls can bind to machines, as long as consciousness can persist in circuits and code, the haunting will never truly end. New victims will be added. New animatronics will become possessed. New locations will be cursed, but there is also resistance. Michael Afton hunting his father despite being undead. Henry Emily sacrificing himself to free the spirits. Glamrock Freddy protecting Gregory instead of hunting him. The puppet watching over lost children. These acts of protection and sacrifice show that even in a universe defined by supernatural horror, there is still room for heroism, for redemption, for the possibility that the cycle might someday break. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is complete and unsettling, because it reflects uncomfortable truths about trauma, about how the past shapes the present, about how evil can persist across generations if not actively confronted and destroyed. The animatronics are metaphors for how violence echoes through time, how victims can become trapped in cycles of pain, how children suffer for adult decisions. William Afton represents the worst of human nature: intelligence without empathy, curiosity without ethics, ambition without compassion. He is every person who has chosen knowledge over morality, who has treated others as means to an end, who has refused to accept the consequences of their actions. His immortality is not a blessing but a curse, condemning him to exist in states of increasing degradation and horror. The children he killed represent innocence destroyed. They were at pizza restaurants to celebrate birthdays, to play games, to be happy. They trusted the man in the rabbit costume. They followed him because children are taught to trust adults, and they paid for that trust with their lives and their afterlives. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's does not end with security breach. New games continue to be released, new chapters continue to be added. The franchise has expanded beyond games into books, into theories, into a massive collaborative storytelling project involving the creator and the community. Each new piece of content adds to the timeline, clarifies some elements while complicating others, but the core remains the same. A pizza restaurant where something terrible happened, animatronics that should not be alive, a killer who should be dead, souls that cannot rest, a cycle that cannot break. This is the complete and unsettling lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, from Fredbear's family diner to the mega Pizzaplex. From William Afton the engineer to William Afton the digital ghost. From 5 murdered children to generations of suffering spirits, the timeline has been told. And yet, the story is not over. Because in this universe, stories do not end when they should. Monsters do not die when they are killed. Hauntings do not stop when buildings burn. The lights in the pizzeria are off. The animatronics stand in darkness, but they are not powered down. They are waiting. Somewhere in the network, Glitchtrap persists, a virus searching for new hosts. Somewhere in the ruins, Remnant continues to contaminate, to bind, to transform. Somewhere a child's soul is still trapped, still confused, still angry. The cycle continues. It always continues. Because some horrors once begun can never truly end. They can only be endured, resisted, survived. The timeline of Five Nights at Freddy's is complete, but the story will continue as long as someone remembers what happened in that pizza restaurant so many years ago, as long as the animatronics can still move, as long as the spirits cannot rest, as long as William Afton's consciousness exists in any form. The haunting persists, the hunt continues, the nightmare refuses to end. This is the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's pizza. This is the price of Remnant. This is what happens when a brilliant man discovers that death is not the end and decides that immortality is worth any cost. The timeline is complete. The lore has been told. But the doors to the pizzeria are never truly closed. The animatronics are never truly powered down. The past is never truly buried. And somewhere in the dark, something is still watching, still waiting, still hungry. The cycle continues. Before Freddy Fazbear became a household name, there was Fredbear, a golden animatronic bear with a purple hat and bow tie, designed to sing and entertain families in a small establishment that felt more like a local diner than a full-scale pizzeria. This was Fredbear's family diner, and it was here that the entire Fazbear entertainment empire began. Two men created this place, William Afton and Henry Emily. Partners in both business and innovation, they shared a vision of bringing animatronic entertainment to children in a way that had never been done before. Henry was the creative soul, the dreamer who wanted to make children happy. William was the engineer, the technical mind who could turn those dreams into reality. Together, they built something revolutionary, the Springlock suits. These were not ordinary animatronic costumes. They were hybrid machines that could function in two modes. In animatronic mode, the internal endoskeleton would be locked in place, and the suit could perform automated movements and entertain guests. In suit mode, the endoskeleton would be carefully compressed and locked to the sides of the suit, using a series of spring-loaded mechanisms, creating enough space inside for a human employee to wear the costume and perform manually. It was brilliant, it was innovative, it was also incredibly dangerous. These spring locks that held the endoskeleton in place were highly sensitive to moisture, sudden movements, and pressure changes. If they failed, if even one lock came loose, the entire endoskeleton would snap back into place in a fraction of a second. And if someone was wearing the suit when that happened, the metal framework would close around them like a bear trap, impaling them with rods, gears, and mechanical components. Death would not be instant. It would be slow, agonizing. The person would drown in their own blood as the suit filled with it, unable to scream because their lungs would be pierced. William and Henry knew the risks. They trained employees extensively. They created strict protocols. But they also knew that Springlock suits created magic in a way that pure animatronics could not. When a person wore the Fredbear or Spring Bonnie costume, they could interact with children directly, hug them, perform personalized shows, create memories. The risk was deemed acceptable. For a while, everything worked. Fredbear's family diner became popular. Children loved the Golden Bear and Golden Rabbit. Parents felt their money was well spent. The business thrived. Henry and William began planning expansion. They envisioned a larger location with more animatronics, more attractions, more profit. But William Afton was not satisfied with success. Something inside him was broken. Something dark. The first victim was not at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. It was at Fredbear's family diner, or possibly just outside it. Henry Emily's daughter, Charlotte, often called Charlie. She was locked outside the building during a party, for reasons that are still unclear. Perhaps she was crying. Perhaps she had been sent outside briefly. What we know is that William Afton found her there, alone, vulnerable. He killed her. This was before the missing children incident. This may have been William's first murder, the moment he crossed a line from which there was no return. Charlie's body was left in the rain, behind the diner, discarded like trash. But her soul, like those who would follow her, did not rest. She possessed an animatronic, one that Henry would later create in his grief and obsession. The puppet, also known as the marionette. The puppet became something unique among the possessed animatronics. Charlie's soul retained more awareness, more purpose. She became a guardian of sorts, watching over the other children's spirits, trying to help them, trying to keep them safe even though she could not save herself. The puppet would appear throughout the timeline, a slender figure with a white mask and tears painted on its cheeks, moving with an eerie grace that was unlike the jerky motions of the other robots. But we're still in the early days, still at Fredbear's, and William Afton was just beginning. William had a family, a wife whose name we never learn, whose fate remains unclear, and 3 children, Michael the oldest, Elizabeth the only daughter, and the youngest son whose name is never spoken in the games, whom the community has come to call the crying child or bite victim. The youngest son was terrified of the animatronics. He cried constantly when near them. He saw things in them that others did not, shadows moving behind their eyes, darkness lurking in their mechanical movements. Perhaps he was sensitive to the supernatural. Perhaps he simply feared the loud noises and large figures. Whatever the reason, his fear was real and profound. His older brother Michael did not understand this fear, or perhaps he did not care. Michael was cruel in the way that teenagers can be, tormenting his younger brother with pranks and scares. He wore a foxy mask and jumped out at him. He locked him in rooms. He told him stories about the animatronics coming to life and eating children. This bullying was constant, relentless. In 1983, the crying child's birthday arrived. His family planned a party at Fredbear's family diner, the last place the boy wanted to be. He begged not to go. He cried and pleaded, but no one listened. The party was scheduled. The cake was ordered. The reservations were made. Michael and his friends had planned something special, a final prank, the ultimate scare. While the party was underway, while animatronics performed and children played, Michael and his friends grabbed the crying child. The boy screamed and struggled, but he was too small, too weak to fight them off. They carried him toward the stage where Fredbear was performing, the golden bear singing its pre-programmed songs with mechanical precision. The crying child was sobbing, begging them to stop, but the teenagers were laughing. They thought it was funny. They thought he would get over his fear if they forced him to face it. They lifted him up, higher and higher, until his head was level with Fredbear's mouth. The animatronic's jaw was open, mid-song, revealing the metal endoskeleton inside, the hydraulic systems that powered the movements. Then they shoved him forward. The crying child's head entered Fredbear's mouth, and the animatronic's jaw began to close. Whether it was a malfunction, whether it was the pressure sensors detecting an object in the mouth, or whether something darker was at play, we will never know for certain. What we do know is that Fredbear's jaw clamped down with tremendous force. The spring locks, perhaps triggered by the moisture of the child's tears or the movement of the struggling body, began to fail. The sound was said to be unforgettable. The crunch of bone, the screaming of children, the wet, tearing noise of a young boy's skull being crushed by metal jaws designed to entertain. This was the bite of 83. The crying child did not die immediately. He was rushed to the hospital, his head catastrophically injured, his brain exposed. For days he lingered in a coma while his family kept vigil. Michael, consumed by guilt, sat by his brother's bedside and apologized over and over. He promised his brother would not die. He begged him to wake up. But the crying child's injuries were too severe. In his coma, the boy experienced strange visions. He saw Fredbear and his plush toys speaking to him, promising that he would be put back together, that everything would be okay. These were likely hallucinations, the dying brain trying to make sense of trauma. Or they were something more, evidence that William Afton was experimenting even then, trying to preserve consciousness, trying to cheat death. On the 5th day, the flatline came. The crying child died. His soul left his broken body and went somewhere, perhaps into another animatronic, perhaps into the shadows themselves. The community has long theorized that he became Golden Freddy along with Cassidy, two souls sharing one suit, which would explain Golden Freddy's unique behavior and appearance, The bite of 83 destroyed Fredbear's family diner. The location was closed immediately. The spring-lock suits were decommissioned and locked away in storage. William and Henry's partnership began to fracture. Henry was devastated by the death of another child in his establishment, coming so soon after the loss of his own daughter. William's reaction was harder to read. Some evidence suggests he felt guilt over his son's death. Other evidence suggests he was simply angry at the waste of it all. The Afton family was shattered. Michael carried the guilt of his brother's death for the rest of his life. Elizabeth grew up in a household filled with grief and secrets, and William's wife vanished from the record entirely, leading to speculation that she left, died, or met some other tragic fate. But Fredbear's closing did not end the Fazbear entertainment story. It was only the beginning. Henry and William regrouped. They learned from their mistakes, or so they claimed. They created a new location with new animatronics, safer designs that did not require spring locks. They created Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. And William Afton, rather than being chastened by tragedy, found a new obsession. He became fixated on life and death, on the nature of the soul, on whether consciousness could exist beyond the physical body. His son's death had not made him more careful. It had made him curious, dangerously curious. The stage was set for something far worse than an accidental death. The stage was set for deliberate murder. To understand the 5 Nights at Freddy's timeline, you must understand William Afton. Not just his actions, but what drove him. What transformed a brilliant engineer and businessman into one of fiction's most notorious child murderers? The answer is not simple. It is layered, complex, and disturbing in its implications. William Afton was a genius. His understanding of robotics, animatronics, and mechanical engineering was decades ahead of his time. He created machines that could move with lifelike precision, speak with synthesized voices that almost sounded human, and perform complex routines without direct control. But his genius extended beyond the mechanical. William understood something that most engineers never considered. He understood remnant. Remnant is the physical manifestation of a soul's attachment to the living world. When someone dies with strong enough emotion, with enough trauma or unfinished business, a part of their consciousness can linger. It can bind itself to objects, to places, to machines. This is not metaphor. In the 5 Nights at Freddy's universe, this is scientific fact, and William Afton discovered it. The timeline of when William made this discovery is unclear. Some evidence suggests he experimented before his son's death, that perhaps he even allowed the bite of 83 to happen as a test of his theories. Other evidence suggests the crying child's death was the catalyst that drove him to explore the boundaries between life and death. What we know for certain is that by the time of the missing children incident in 1985, William understood how to create Remnant, and he understood its potential. Remnant could make animatronics truly alive, not just programmed but aware, conscious. If infused with Remnant, a robot could think, feel, react with genuine emotion rather than simulated responses. For a robotics engineer, this was the holy grail, the ultimate achievement. Life created not through biology, but through technology and supernatural fusion. But Remnant could only be harvested from the dead, specifically from the traumatically dead, from souls that refused to move on. William needed test subjects. He needed children. Why children specifically? The evidence suggests several reasons. Children's souls are more pure, more malleable. They possess stronger emotions, deeper attachments. When a child dies in fear and confusion, their soul is more likely to linger, more likely to create remnant. Additionally, and perhaps more cynically, children are easier to lure, easier to control, easier to make disappear without immediate suspicion. William's first victim, we believe, was Charlotte Emily, Henry's daughter. This murder may have been opportunistic rather than planned. Charlie was outside the diner, vulnerable and alone. William saw an opportunity and took it. Whether he understood Remnant at that point is debatable, but Charlie's soul possessing the puppet may have been the proof of concept he needed. Proof that consciousness could survive death and inhabit machinery. After Fredbear's closed and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened, William had access to new animatronics and new opportunities. He designed a Spring Bonnie suit from the old Fredbear's location, or used one of the decommissioned Springlock costumes. This suit served multiple purposes. It allowed him to disguise himself, it allowed him to lure children who trusted costumed characters, and it gave him a dark sort of irony, using the very symbols of childhood joy as instruments of death. The missing children incident happened in 1985, as we discussed earlier. 5 children lured to a back room, 5 bodies hidden in animatronic suits, 5 souls trapped in mechanical prisons. But this was not the end of William's killing, it was only the beginning. Over the years, more children vanished. The exact number is unknown. Some estimates suggest a dozen or more. Each one was a data point in William's research. Each one provided more remnant for his experiments. He became addicted to it, not just to the knowledge, but to the act itself. There was power in it, control, the ability to determine who lived and who died, who became immortal through possession, and who simply ceased to exist. But William made mistakes. He underestimated the souls he created. He believed they would be controllable, predictable, useful for his research. Instead, they were angry. They were vengeful. They remembered their murders even if they could not fully comprehend them, and they wanted justice. The animatronics began to malfunction more frequently. Not just smell and movement, but aggressive behavior towards staff. The company tried to explain it away as programming errors, as mechanical failures. But the truth was that the possessed animatronics were hunting. They were searching for William Afton, the man in the Spring Bonnie suit, the man who killed them. William had to be careful. He could not be caught. He could not allow the animatronics to corner him. He maintained his role as a technician and co-owner, giving him access to the buildings and the machines, allowing him to continue his experiments while staying one step ahead of both law enforcement and the spirits hunting him. Then came 1987 and the opening of a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. This restaurant featured updated animatronics with facial recognition software, advanced mobility, and child safety features. William saw new opportunities, new machines to experiment with, new children to study. But this location would be the site of another tragedy, another bite, another closing, and the beginning of William's downfall. We do not know exactly what drove William Afton. The games provide glimpses but never a complete picture. Was he trying to achieve immortality for himself? Was he trying to bring his son back to life? Was he simply a psychopath who enjoyed killing? The answer may be all of these things. William was complex in the way that real monsters often are. He was capable of love, evidenced by his interactions with his daughter Elizabeth. He was capable of innovation and creativity, evidenced by his technological achievements. But he was also capable of unspeakable cruelty. Some theorists suggest William was motivated by a desire to understand death because he feared it. His son's death showed him that life was fragile, temporary. By studying Remnant, by learning to trap souls in animatronics, he could potentially create eternal life for himself. He could become immortal, not through biological means but through mechanical possession. Other theorists suggest William was trying to free his son's soul to bring the crying child back in some form. This theory is supported by evidence that William created the Funtime animatronics with child-capturing mechanisms, perhaps hoping to harvest enough remnant to reconstruct his son's consciousness. Still others believe William was simply evil, that some people are born with something missing inside them, an absence of empathy that allows them to harm others without remorse. William showed all the signs of psychopathy: charm, intelligence, manipulation, lack of guilt. He used his position and skills to create opportunities for murder, and he did so repeatedly without ever stopping. The truth is probably a combination. William Afton was a brilliant man driven by grief, fear, and curiosity into increasingly dark experiments. He convinced himself that his work had value, that the ends justified the means. Each murder became easier to rationalize. Each child was not a person, but a component in a larger machine, a necessary sacrifice for scientific progress. But William's greatest mistake was believing he could control the consequences of his actions. He believed he could stay ahead of the possessed animatronics forever. He believed he could keep killing without being caught. He believed he was smarter than everyone else, including the souls of the children he murdered. He was wrong. The animatronics learned, they planned, and eventually they would have their revenge. But not before William caused more tragedy, not before his own family paid the price for his obsession. His daughter Elizabeth would be the next victim, though not by his hand directly. She would be killed by one of his own creations, an animatronic he designed to lure and capture children, an animatronic called Circus Baby. But that part of the story comes later. First, we need to understand what happened at the second Freddy Fazbear's pizza location, the one with the toy animatronics, the one where another child was bitten, the one where William's murders finally started to catch up with him. William Afton represents something terrifying because he is not a supernatural monster. He is a human being who made choices. Each murder was a decision. Each experiment was deliberate. He could have stopped at any time. He could have sought help, abandoned his research, turned himself in, but he did not. He kept going, driven by obsession and a complete disregard for human life. The community often refers to him as the man behind the slaughter, a phrase taken from a fan song but which captures something essential about his character. He worked in shadows. He hid behind costumes and corporate positions. He let others take the blame, let the company absorb the scandals while he continued his work. He was the architect of all the tragedy, the invisible hand guiding events toward more death, more remnant, more knowledge. And even when his body finally died, even when he met his end in the most ironic way possible, crushed inside a spring-lock suit just like his victims were crushed, inside animatronics, William Afton still did not stop. His consciousness persisted. His will remained. Death was not an ending for him. It was a transformation. But we are getting ahead of ourselves again. William's death comes later in the timeline. First, we need to see how his actions rippled outward, destroying locations, ruining lives, and creating more ghosts to haunt the halls of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The man behind the slaughter was just getting started. After Fredbear's family diner closed in the wake of the Bite of 83, William Afton and Henry Emily needed a fresh start. They needed to distance themselves from the tragedy, rebrand their business, and prove that animatronic entertainment could still be safe and profitable. The result was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a larger venue with new characters and a renewed focus on family fun. This original location, which would eventually be referenced in later games, opened sometime in the early to mid-1980s. It featured 4 main animatronic characters that would become iconic. Freddy Fazbear, the brown bear with a top hat and bow tie, Bonnie the bunny, purple with a red bow tie and guitar, Chica the chicken, yellow with a bib reading Let's Eat, and Foxy the pirate fox, red with an eye patch and hook stationed in his own separate area called Pirate Cove. These animatronics were different from the springlock suits. They were pure robots, incapable of being worn by humans. This made them safer from a technical standpoint, eliminating the risk of springlock failures. But it also made them less interactive. They performed on stage, following preset routines, unable to walk among guests or create the personalised moments that the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie suits had provided. The restaurant was designed to be a wonderland for children. Bright colours covered every surface. Prize counters offered toys and tickets. Arcade machines lined the walls. The smell of pizza filled the air. And at the centre of it all was the main stage where Freddy, Bonnie and Chica would perform hourly shows of songs and basic dialogue, their movements synchronised to pre-recorded audio tracks. For a while, it worked. Families came. Birthday parties were booked months in advance. The business thrived. Henry Emily poured his heart into making the restaurant a place where children could create happy memories. He wanted to honour his daughter's memory by bringing joy to others, by creating the safe, magical space that Charlie had been denied. But William Afton had different plans. William saw the new location not as a fresh start, but as a new laboratory. More animatronics meant more opportunities for experimentation. More children visiting meant more potential subjects for his remnant research. He had learned from his first killing, from Charlotte's death, that souls could possess animatronics. Now he wanted to refine the process. He wanted to understand the variables, how much trauma was required, which emotional states created the strongest remnant, how long a soul could persist in a mechanical body. The Spring Bonnie suit from Fredbear's had been moved to the new location, stored in a back room officially designated as a safe room. This room did not appear on any blueprints given to franchise owners or employees. It was hidden, visible only to those who knew to look for it. The perfect place for William to change into his killing costume. The perfect place to hide bodies. The missing children incident occurred at this location in June of 1985, though some evidence suggests it may have been earlier or later depending on which timeline interpretation you follow. What matters is what happened. 5 children lured away from the party rooms, murdered in the safe room, their bodies stuffed into the animatronic suits. Based on various mini-games and clues scattered throughout the series, we can piece together some details about these children. Susie was likely the first, lured by William with a story about her dog. Gabriel, Jeremy and Fritz followed. And finally Cassidy, whose death may have been different from the others, who may have seen William's face without the mask, who may have died with more rage and awareness than the others. Their bodies were never found by police. The investigation focused on the man in the Spring Bonnie costume, but William was never formally connected to the disappearances. He was too careful, too smart. He cleaned the suit. He hid evidence. He provided alibis. The case went cold, officially unsolved, but the animatronics knew. The souls trapped inside them knew, and they began to act on that knowledge. The first signs were subtle. Staff members reported that the animatronics would sometimes appear to look at them, even when powered down. Eyes would follow movement. Heads would turn slightly. These were dismissed as mechanical quirks, optical illusions, overactive imaginations. Then came the smell, that thick, rot-sweet odour that seemed to seep from inside Freddy, Bonnie, Chica and Foxy. The company tried to clean them, to sanitize them, to replace filters and components. Nothing worked. The smell persisted because its source was organic, the decomposing remains of children hidden within metal frames. Next came the movement, animatronics found in different positions than they'd been left in. Foxy's curtain at Pirate Cove opening and closing on its own. Freddy appearing in camera feeds where he should not be. These incidents were documented by security guards, but management dismissed them as pranks or equipment failures. The truth was that the animatronics were waking up. The souls inside them were learning to control their new bodies. At first, the movements were random, reflexive, but over time, the spirits learned. They discovered they could move during the night when the building was empty. They discovered they could override safety protocols. They discovered they could hunt. The original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza became a nightmare for night shift workers. Guards reported animatronics entering their office staring at them with lifeless eyes. Some guards quit after a single night. Others disappeared entirely, their fates never confirmed but strongly implied. The company could not admit what was happening without revealing the murders, so they continued operating, hiring new guards, offering higher pay for the night shift to compensate for the difficulty of the position. William Afton visited the location regularly, ostensibly to perform maintenance and upgrades. In reality, he was studying the possessed animatronics. He took measurements, collected samples, performed tests. The spirits recognized him on some level, but they were confused, their memories fragmented. Sometimes they chased him, other times they ignored him. William documented everything, building his understanding of Remnant through direct observation of his own crimes. Henry Emily remained largely unaware of what William was doing. Henry was focused on the business side, on expansion plans, on maintaining the company's reputation despite the scandals. He noticed the problems, the complaints, the rumours, but he trusted William to handle the technical issues. That trust was a mistake that would haunt Henry for the rest of his life. The original location eventually closed, though the exact date and reason vary depending on interpretation. Some evidence suggests it closed soon after the murders due to health code violations related to the smell. Other evidence suggests it remained open for years, continuing to operate even as the haunting intensified. What seems clear is that by the late 1980s this location was abandoned, the animatronics left inside to rot. But the story did not end there. The company, now operating under Fazbear Entertainment after Henry's increasing involvement, decided to open a new location. A bigger, more modern restaurant with updated technology and new animatronics. They would take some elements from the original location, including the classic animatronic designs, but everything would be refreshed, sanitized, made safe for a new generation. This new location would open in 1987. And it would be the site of another bite, another tragedy, another step toward the company's inevitable collapse. The original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza represents the point of no return for the franchise. This is where the murders happened. This is where the souls were trapped. This is where the haunting truly began. Everything that follows, every location, every animatronic, every death can be traced back to what William Afton did in that safe room in 1985. The children's spirits were bound to their metal prisons, unable to move on, unable to find peace. They were locked in an eternal loop of confusion and rage, attacking anyone who entered the building after dark, believing every adult was their killer. Their childhoods had been stolen, their lives had been ended, and their afterlives were spent trapped in mechanical bodies, surrounded by the cheerful music and bright colours of a place that was supposed to be happy. This is the core tragedy of Five Nights at Freddy's. Not just that children were murdered, though that is horrific enough, but that they could not rest even in death. That William Afton's obsession with remnant and immortality damned these children to an existence worse than simply ceasing to be. They were aware but confused, present but powerless, angry but unable to find the right target for their rage, and they would remain trapped for decades. The original location sits abandoned now, at least in terms of the timeline. The building is empty, the power is off, the doors are chained, but the animatronics remain inside. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and the mysterious Golden Freddy. They sit in the dark, waiting. They have learned patience through years of confinement. They know that eventually someone will return. A guard, a trespasser, a foolish explorer, and when that someone arrives, the hunt will begin again. The original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is ground zero. It is where the supernatural merged with the technological. It is where William Afton proved his theories about remnant. It is where 5 children became immortal in the worst possible way, and it is where the pattern was established that would repeat again and again throughout the franchise's history. Murder, possession, haunting, revenge. A cycle that cannot be broken because the souls cannot move on. A story that cannot end because the spirits will not let it end. They are still there, in the dark, in the machines, waiting for justice that may never come. This is the legacy of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This is where it all truly began. In 1987, Fazbear Entertainment opened a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, determined to leave the scandals and tragedies of the past behind. This restaurant represented a massive investment in both money and technology. The company wanted to prove that animatronic entertainment could be safe, modern, and successful. They wanted to reclaim the family-friendly image that had been tarnished by the missing children incident. The new location featured completely redesigned animatronics. These were not the bulky, mechanical-looking robots of the previous generation. They were sleek, colourful, and built with child safety as the primary concern. The company advertised them as Toy Animatronics, though they were far more sophisticated than that name suggested. Toy Freddy was smaller and rounder than his predecessor, with a more friendly, approachable appearance. Toy Bonnie was a bright blue instead of purple, with green eyes and a guitar. Toy Chica had a more feminine design with a bib and cupcake companion, and there was a new character entirely. The Mangle, originally called Toy Foxy, designed for a kids area where children could interact directly with the animatronic. The most significant technological advancement was the facial recognition software. Each toy animatronic was equipped with a criminal database, able to scan faces in the restaurant and alert staff if anyone on a watch list was detected. This feature was marketed as a security measure, proof that the company was taking child safety seriously in the wake of previous incidents. In truth, it was a response to William Afton. While the company could not publicly accuse him, there were suspicions. The facial recognition system was designed to track him, to monitor his movements, to prevent him from being alone with children. But William was clever. He knew about the system. He worked around it. The new location also featured the old animatronics from the previous restaurant. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy were kept in a back room, officially for parts and occasional use. In reality, they were too damaged, too contaminated, too haunted to be trusted on the main floor. The company could not simply destroy them without raising questions, so they were kept in storage, powered down, supposedly harmless. But the souls inside them were not gone. Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy remained bound to their metal bodies, and they were not powerless. The puppet also appeared at this location, housed in a large music box in the prize corner. Charlotte Emily's spirit resided in this animatronic, and unlike the others, she retained more clarity of purpose. The puppet served as a guardian, watching over the other children's spirits, helping them when possible. The music box had to be wound regularly to keep the puppet contained, though whether this was a mechanical necessity or a supernatural requirement was unclear. During the day, the new location seemed successful. Children loved the bright, friendly toy animatronics. Birthday parties filled the calendar. Revenue increased. The company's stock began to recover. Everything appeared to be working according to plan. But at night, things were very different. The toy animatronics, despite having no apparent reason to be haunted, began exhibiting strange behaviours. They would move through the building after hours, entering the security office, approaching the night guard with what seemed like hostile intent. The facial recognition software would malfunction, identifying the guard as a potential threat. The animatronics would respond by attempting to deal with that threat, which meant stuffing the guard into a Freddy Fazbear suit. Why were the toy animatronics haunted? They were new builds, not connected to the original murders. Several theories exist. The most likely explanation involves remnant contamination. When the old animatronics were moved to the new location, when parts were salvaged and reused, traces of remnant could have transferred to the new machines. Even a small amount of remnant could create paranormal activity, especially in an environment already saturated with supernatural energy. Another theory suggests that the puppet, driven by Charlotte's protective instincts, gave life to the toy animatronics. Just as she would later give life to the original animatronics in the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame, she may have extended some spiritual energy to the toys, animating them to help protect against William Afton or other threats. Regardless of the cause, the new location quickly developed the same reputation as the old one. Night guards reported terrifying encounters. Complaints were filed. The company responded by increasing pay for the night shift, but they refused to acknowledge any supernatural activity. They blamed software glitches, maintenance issues, anything but the truth. William Afton continued his work during this period. He had access to the building as a technician and company co-founder. The facial recognition system tracked him, but he knew how to avoid its gaze, how to position himself in blind spots, how to temporarily disable cameras. He studied the toy animatronics, fascinated by the fact that they showed signs of possession despite being new. He also paid attention to the old animatronics sitting in the back room. They were more active than the company realized. At night, when the building was supposedly empty, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy would move. They would crawl through vents, emerge from storage, and hunt for the night guard. They were searching for William, but they could not distinguish him from any other adult in the building. The situation at the 1987 location was unsustainable. The company knew it, but they were trapped. Closing the restaurant would mean admitting failure again. Keeping it open meant risking more incidents, more complaints, more potential lawsuits. They chose to keep operating, hoping they could solve the problems or at least manage them until the negative publicity faded. Then came the Bite of 87. The details of this incident are less clear than the Bite of 83. We know it happened during the day, during a birthday party or event. We know that one of the animatronics bit someone, likely an adult based on references in later games. We know the injury was severe, involving the frontal lobe of the brain, and we know the victim survived, though with significant neurological damage. Which animatronic was responsible? The community has debated this for years. Some evidence points to Mangle, the Toy Foxy variant that was constantly torn apart and rebuilt by children in the kids' area. Mangle had the most exposed endoskeleton, the sharpest teeth, and spent the most time around guests. Other evidence suggests it could have been Toy Chica, whose beak is removable and whose behaviour is particularly aggressive at night. Less likely candidates include Toy Bonnie and Freddy, though they cannot be completely ruled out. Some even suggest one of the old animatronics escaped from the back room and caused the bite, though this seems less plausible given the daytime timing. What we know for certain is that the bite of 87 ended the new location's operation. The restaurant closed immediately. The toy animatronics were scrapped, their parts scattered, their bodies destroyed. This decision may have been mandated by law, or it may have been the company trying to eliminate evidence of malfunction. The old animatronics were kept, however. They were moved again, stored for potential future use. Whether this was because the company could not afford to scrap them, or because they did not want to destroy evidence of the original murders is unclear. But Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy survived the closing of the 1987 location. The bite of 87 had ripple effects throughout the industry and the timeline. New regulations were imposed on animatronic entertainment. Restaurants featuring robotic characters were required to implement additional safety measures. The entire business model of Fazbear Entertainment was called into question. Insurance companies raised premiums or refused coverage entirely. For William Afton, the closing of the 1987 location was both a setback and an opportunity. His access to active restaurants was temporarily limited, which made it harder to study possessed animatronics or experiment with Remnant. But it also meant the old animatronics, his original subjects, were being moved to storage where he could access them more easily without interference. For Henry Emily, the bite of 87 was another crushing blow. Another child or person harmed in one of his restaurants. Another failure of safety systems he had trusted. Henry was beginning to understand that something was fundamentally wrong with Fazbear Entertainment, that the problems ran deeper than mechanical failures or bad luck. But he did not yet know the full truth about his partner. The 1987 location represents a failed attempt at redemption. The company tried to move forward, tried to implement new technology and safety measures, tried to rebuild its reputation. And for a brief time, it seemed to work. But the past cannot be so easily escaped. The remnant of William's crimes contaminated the new location, just as it had contaminated the old one. The spirits of the murdered children were not confined to their original bodies. They could spread, influence, possess new machines. As long as Fazbear Entertainment existed, as long as animatronics were built and children came to party, the haunting would continue. The building that housed the 1987 location now sits empty, just like the original. The toy animatronics were destroyed, but their remnant likely persisted in some form. Scrap metal can carry spiritual energy. Parts can be recycled into new machines. The contamination spreads like a virus, infecting each new generation of animatronics with the anger and confusion of murdered children. And somewhere in storage, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy waited. Their hunt was not over. Their purpose was not fulfilled. They had not found William Afton yet. They had not achieved justice, and they would keep trying, keep hunting, keep killing until they did. The Bite of 87 closed one chapter of the Fazbear Entertainment story, but it opened another darker chapter, one that would lead to more death, more possession, and eventually to a confrontation that would define the entire timeline. 30 years after the closing of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the tragedies had become urban legends. The missing children incident was a cold case. The Bite of 87 was a cautionary tale. Fazbear Entertainment had dissolved, bankrupt and disgraced. The locations were abandoned, sealed, forgotten by everyone except those who had lived through the horrors. But stories have a way of persisting, and horror has a way of attracting curious minds. In the early 2000s, based on the timeline suggested by the games, a group of entrepreneurs had an idea. Why not capitalize on the Fazbear legacy? Why not turn the dark history into entertainment? Horror attractions were popular. People loved being scared in controlled environments. The perfect concept would be a horror attraction based on real events, using actual artifacts from the defunct Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations. They called it Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. The developers of Fazbear's Fright began collecting items from the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's locations. They scavenged old animatronic parts, decorations, arcade machines, anything that could add authenticity to their attraction. They designed the building to look like a decrepit pizzeria, complete with false walls, narrow corridors and ventilation systems that guests could hear but not see. The goal was to create an immersive experience where visitors would feel like they were exploring a real haunted restaurant. During their scavenging, they made a discovery in one of the sealed safe rooms, a room that did not appear on any blueprint, hidden behind a false wall in the original Freddy Fazbear's pizza location. Inside this room, surrounded by decades of dust and decay, they found something remarkable. A yellow animatronic rabbit, heavily damaged, corroded, and containing something that might once have been human remains. They called it Springtrap. This was William Afton's final form, or rather his prison. To understand how he ended up inside that Spring Bonnie suit, we need to jump back in the timeline to shortly after the closing of the 1987 location. After the Bite of 87, Fazbear Entertainment was in crisis mode. Locations were closing, legal fees were mounting, the company was dying. But the old animatronics still existed, still haunted, still dangerous. Someone needed to deal with them. William Afton, perhaps sensing that his time was running out, decided to return to the original location. His reasons were complex. He may have wanted to destroy the evidence of his crimes. He may have wanted to extract remnant from the animatronics before they were dismantled. He may have simply wanted to study them one last time. He broke into the abandoned building one night, equipped with tools to dismantle the animatronics. The spirits inside those machines, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, sensed his presence immediately. After years of searching, after countless false alarms when they attacked security guards who were not their killer, they finally found him. William Afton. The man who murdered them, the man in the rabbit suit. The animatronics chased him through the building, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, moving with single-minded purpose. William ran, his confidence evaporating as the machines closed in. He had studied them for years, documented their behaviors, used them for his experiments. But he had underestimated their persistence, their rage, their ability to recognize him despite the passage of time. William fled to the safe room, the secret area where he had committed his murders. He believed the animatronics could not follow him there. Their programming included restrictions against entering areas not on the building's official blueprints. But these were not programs driving the animatronics anymore. These were souls, and souls do not follow programming restrictions. Cornered, desperate, William saw only one option. The old Spring Bonnie suit hung on the wall where he had left it years ago. If he wore the suit, the spirits might mistake him for one of them. They might hesitate, giving him time to escape. It was a gamble, but William Afton was out of options. He climbed into the Spring Bonnie suit. The spring locks clicked into place, compressing the endoskeleton to make room for his body. He laughed. He mocked the spirits. They had not won. He had survived. He always survived. Then the ceiling began to leak. The safe room had sat sealed for years. Rain had damaged the roof. Water dripped from above, landing on William's shoulders, seeping into the fabric of the spring Bonnie suit. The spring locks, designed to be highly sensitive to moisture, began to fail. The first lock released with a sharp snap, then another, then all of them at once. The endoskeleton expanded violently, crushing inward. Metal rods pierced William's organs. Gears crushed his bones. Springs tore through his flesh. His ribcage was punctured. His lungs filled with blood. He tried to scream, but the mechanism had pierced his throat. He could only gurgle, drowning in his own blood while the metal framework impaled him from every angle. Death did not come quickly. Springlock failures were designed to be survivable for a short time, giving victims a chance to be rescued. But no one was coming for William. He was alone in a sealed room with the spirits of his victims watching as he died in the most agonizing way possible. The irony was perfect. William Afton, who had stuffed children's bodies into animatronic suits, was now dying inside one himself. The man who had studied death, who had tried to cheat it through remnant and possession, was experiencing it firsthand in the most brutal fashion. But William Afton did not simply die. His own theories about remnant proved true. As William's life faded, as his consciousness slipped away, his soul clung to the physical world. The trauma of his death, the rage of the spirits surrounding him, the remnant he had spent years studying and collecting, all of it combined to trap his consciousness inside the spring Bonnie suit. Just as the children's souls had possessed the animatronics, William's soul possessed Springtrap. He became what he had created, a human consciousness trapped in a mechanical body, unable to die, unable to escape, sealed in the safe room with the ruined animatronics and the ghosts of his victims. For 30 years William Afton existed in that room, aware but immobile, conscious but powerless. The suit had fused with his rotting flesh, becoming part of him. He could feel every maggot, every rat, every moment of decay. He could hear the building settling, wind whistling through broken windows, rain dripping through holes in the roof. He could think, remember, regret. Or perhaps he felt no regret at all. Perhaps William Afton's consciousness remained as twisted in death as it had been in life, planning, scheming, waiting for the opportunity to resume his work. That opportunity came when the Fazbear's Fright developers found him. They had no idea what they had discovered. To them, Springtrap was an incredibly authentic prop, perhaps the best piece they had found. They loaded the animatronic into a truck and brought it to the attraction. They placed it in a prominent location where visitors could see it, marvel at how realistic it looked, how decayed and frightening it appeared. They did not notice that it moved slightly when no one was watching. They did not notice the way its eyes seemed to track movement. They did not realize that inside the rotting suit, inside the corroded endoskeleton, something was waking up. William Afton was free. The attraction opened to the public, but almost immediately problems began. Springtrap would disappear from its display position and appear elsewhere in the building. The ventilation system would fail mysteriously, filling rooms with smoke and triggering fire alarms. Audio recordings used in the attraction would be disturbed by strange sounds, breathing and groaning that should not have been there. The night security guard hired to watch the building during off hours reported increasingly disturbing encounters. Springtrap would move through the attraction at night, clearly animated by more than any mechanical system. The guard could hear it walking in the vents, scratching at walls, searching for something, searching for victims. William Afton in his Springtrap body was different from the possessed animatronics. He retained his intelligence, his memories, his personality. He was not a confused child spirit. He was a calculating killer in a new form. 30 years of imprisonment had not softened him. If anything, it had intensified his obsession with survival and remnant. But Springtrap's body was failing. The suit was held together by rust and willpower. Flesh and metal had become indistinguishable, both rotting together. William's supernatural persistence kept him animated, but he was not whole. He was a corpse puppeteering a damaged animatronic suit, held together by remnant and rage. The attraction operated for 1 week. During that week, it became clear that something was fundamentally wrong. Equipment failures escalated. The animatronic props became contaminated with the same malevolent energy that radiated from Springtrap. The phantom animatronics began appearing, hallucinations or ghosts of the original spirits drawn to William's presence. Then came the fire. On the final night, Fazbear's Fright burned. Whether it was an accident, a deliberate act by the security guard, or something else entirely, the building went up in flames. Everything inside was destroyed. The props, the decorations, the horror attraction that tried to profit from tragedy, all of it turned to ash. Springtrap should have been destroyed in that fire. The heat should have been enough to melt the metal, to cremate the remains inside, to finally end William Afton's existence. But when investigators sifted through the wreckage, they found no trace of the yellow rabbit animatronic. Springtrap had escaped. William Afton survived again. He crawled from the ruins, damaged but mobile, driven by the same obsession that had consumed him in life. He could not die. He would not die. Not until he completed his work, not until he understood everything about Remnant, about immortality, about the nature of consciousness and death. The fire at Fazbear's Fright marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. William Afton was loose in the world again, a walking corpse inside a rotting suit, searching for purpose, searching for remnant, searching for a way to continue his experiments. The past 30 years had taught him nothing about restraint. They had only taught him patience, and somewhere in the ashes the spirits of his victims were still searching for him, still hunting, still unable to rest. The fire had not freed them any more than it had destroyed him. The cycle continued. While the public Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations were experiencing their tragedies and closings, William Afton had been working on a secret project, something separate from Fazbear Entertainment, something darker and more experimental than anything Henry Emily would have approved of. He called it Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. This was not a restaurant. It was an underground facility designed to house advanced animatronics that could be rented out for private parties. The location was hidden beneath the surface, accessible only through specific entrances, unknown to most of the public and certainly unknown to Henry. This was William's private laboratory, his testing ground for the most sophisticated animatronic designs he had ever created. The Funtime Animatronics. These machines were unlike anything William had built before. Circus Baby, the star attraction, was designed to look like a clown girl with red pigtails and a colourful costume. Funtime Freddy was white with purple accents, holding a hand puppet named Bon Bon. Funtime Foxy was pink and white with a showman personality, and Ballora was a ballerina animatronic that danced in her own gallery. But these animatronics had a secret purpose. They were built to capture children. Inside each Funtime animatronic's torso was a hollow cavity with mechanisms designed to grab and store a person. The official documentation, if any existed, might have described these as emergency storage compartments or technical access points. The truth was far more sinister. These animatronics were child snatch machines designed to lure children close and trap them inside. William's obsession with Remnant had reached new heights. He was no longer content to manually murder children and hide their bodies. He wanted to automate the process, to create machines that could collect test subjects for him without requiring his direct involvement. The Funtime animatronics were that automation. Circus Baby was the most advanced of these machines. She was designed to appeal specifically to children, with ice cream dispensing mechanisms, balloons, and a cheerful personality. But her capture mechanism was the most sophisticated. A child approaching to receive ice cream would trigger sensors that would activate the claw inside Baby's stomach. The child would be grabbed, pulled inside, and the chest cavity would close. Death would occur inside the animatronic, creating the perfect conditions for remnant harvesting. William tested these animatronics, refined them, prepared them for deployment. But before they could be widely used, tragedy struck his family again. His daughter, William Afton, was fascinated by Circus Baby. William had warned her to stay away from the animatronic. He knew how dangerous it was. He had designed it to be lethal. But Elizabeth did not listen, or perhaps she could not resist. Children are drawn to bright colours and promises of ice cream. One day, when Elizabeth was alone with Circus Baby, she approached the animatronic. Baby's programming activated. The voice, cheerful and inviting, encouraged Elizabeth to come closer, to see the ice cream, to get a special treat just for her. Elizabeth was excited. She did not notice the chest cavity opening. She did not see the claw until it was too late. Circus Baby grabbed Elizabeth Afton and pulled her inside. The mechanisms worked exactly as William had designed them. The chest cavity closed. Inside, Elizabeth died, crushed and suffocated in the metal compartment of an animatronic her father had created. William's reaction to his daughter's death is difficult to interpret from the evidence we have. Some believe he was devastated, that Elizabeth was the one member of his family he genuinely loved. Others suggest he saw her death as another data point, tragic but informative. What we know is that he did not destroy Circus Baby. Instead, he shut down the sister location facility temporarily and sealed the animatronics underground. Elizabeth's soul, like the children before her, did not move on. She possessed Circus Baby, her consciousness merging with the machine that killed her. But unlike the other possessed animatronics, Elizabeth retained much of her personality and memory. She knew who she was, she knew what had happened to her, and she knew her father had created the machine that killed her. This knowledge did not make her hate him. Disturbingly, Elizabeth seemed to still love William, to still seek his approval. She referred to herself as Baby, adopting the animatronic's identity while retaining her own. She became something between human consciousness and machine intelligence, twisted by both her death and her father's influence. The sister location facility sat dormant for years, the Funtime animatronics powered down but not destroyed. William continued his work elsewhere, experimenting with Remnant, committing the missing children murders, pursuing his obsession with immortality. But he did not forget about the underground facility or the advanced animatronics waiting there. At some point, William sent his oldest son Michael to the facility. The reasons are unclear and heavily debated in the community. Some believe William was trying to recover Elizabeth's body or extract her soul from Circus Baby. Others believe he was sending Michael as punishment for causing the crying child's death, condemning him to a fate similar to his siblings. Still others think William was using Michael as an unwitting test subject for his remnant experiments. Michael took a job as a technician at the sister location facility, following instructions that were supposedly from his employer, but were actually from the animatronics themselves. Each night, Michael descended into the underground complex and performed maintenance tasks on Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. But the animatronics were planning something. They'd gained awareness through the presence of Elizabeth's soul in Circus Baby. They understood they were trapped underground. They wanted to escape, and Michael represented their opportunity. The Funtime animatronics had another secret feature. They could combine. Their endoskeletons were modular, designed to merge into a single larger framework. William had created this feature for unknown purposes, perhaps to make transportation easier or to allow the animatronics to share processing power. The animatronics discovered they could use this feature for a different purpose. They could wear a human like a suit. The plan was simple, but horrifying. The Funtime animatronics would combine their endoskeletons into a single entity they called Enard. They would lure Michael to the scooping room, a place in the facility designed to remove endoskeletons from animatronic shells for maintenance. Then they would use the scooping machine on Michael, hollowing out his internal organs and creating an empty human shell. Enard would then climb inside Michael's body and wear his skin to escape the facility. On Michael's 5th night at the sister location, the plan was executed. Circus Baby, speaking with Elizabeth's voice, guided Michael to the scooping room under the pretense of helping him. Michael, likely realizing too late what was happening, was restrained. The scooping mechanism activated. The machine tore through Michael's torso, removing his organs with brutal efficiency. His death should have been immediate and final. His body should have collapsed into a corpse. But something else happened instead. Enard, the combined mass of Funtime endoskeletons, climbed into Michael's empty body. The amalgamation of metal and wire filled the space where organs had been. Michael's skin stretched around the mechanical framework. Somehow, impossibly, the body began to move again. Michael Afton died in the scooping room, but he did not stay dead. Whether it was the remnant residue in the facility, whether it was William's experiments affecting his son even in death, or whether it was something else entirely, Michael's consciousness persisted. He was aware of what had happened. He could feel Enard inside him, controlling his movements, wearing him like a costume. But part of him was still present, still conscious, trapped in his own decaying body. Enard used Michael's body to escape the facility. The animatronic composite walked out into the world wearing Michael's flesh, trying to blend in with human society. For weeks, maybe longer, this charade continued. Michael's body began to decay. His skin turned purple. His movements became stilted. He was rotten from the inside out. Eventually, Enard realized the human body was not a viable long-term solution. The decay was too advanced. The smell was too obvious. Maintaining the illusion was impossible. In an act shown in one of the game's cutscenes, Enard evacuated Michael's body, crawling out through his mouth and escaping into the sewers. Michael collapsed. His body lay motionless, seemingly dead. Any normal person would have died from what he experienced. The scooping, the possession, the decay, all of it should have been fatal. But Michael stood up. His body was purple, his organs were gone, his flesh was rotting. But he was conscious. He was mobile. He was somehow alive despite being technically dead. Michael Afton had become something similar to his father in Springtrap, a consciousness trapped in a body that should not function, but does through supernatural persistence. The difference was that Michael retained his humanity. He understood what had happened to him, and he understood that his father was responsible for all of it, for the crying child's death, for Elizabeth's death, for Michael's own transformation into a living corpse. Michael Afton made a decision. He would find his father. He would stop William's experiments. He would end the cycle of tragedy and death that had consumed their family. Even in his undead state, even as a walking corpse held together by remnant and willpower, Michael still had purpose. This decision would drive the rest of Michael's existence. He would work night shifts at Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, investigating, searching for clues about William's whereabouts. He would survive encounters with the possessed animatronics that his father had created. He would piece together the timeline of tragedies, trying to understand the full scope of William's crimes. The sister location facility represents a turning point in the 5 Nights at Freddy's timeline. It reveals that William's experiments went far beyond simple murder and remnant extraction. He was trying to perfect the fusion of human consciousness and machine, to create animatronics that could actively hunt and capture prey. He was building an infrastructure for industrial-scale remnant harvesting, and in the process he destroyed his own family. His youngest son dead in a springlock bite. His daughter killed by her favourite animatronic. His oldest son turned into an undead monster hunting his father. And William himself, eventually trapped in Springtrap, a rotting fusion of man and machine. The Afton family tragedy is complete, but the story is far from over. The Afton family is the dark heart of the 5 Nights at Freddy's story. Every timeline, every tragedy, every possessed animatronic can be traced back to this one broken household. To truly understand the horror of this franchise, we must understand what happened to William Afton's family and how each member played a role in the greater nightmare. William Afton married a woman whose name we never learn. She appears in no games, no minigames, no direct evidence. She's a ghost in the narrative, present only through her absence. What happened to Mrs. Afton? The community has theorized endlessly. Did she leave William when she discovered his true nature? Did she die in an accident or through William's actions? Did she simply vanish from the record, another victim lost to Afton's obsessions? What we can infer is that she was gone by the time the later events of the timeline unfolded. Whether dead, divorced, or simply erased from William's life, she left 3 children behind. 3 children who would all die tragically. 3 children who would become part of the supernatural legacy their father created. The youngest Afton child, the crying child, was terrified of animatronics from his earliest memories. This fear was not irrational. Some evidence suggests the child could see things others could not. Perhaps the souls already beginning to manifest in Fredbear and the other early animatronics. Or perhaps he simply had a child's instinctive fear of large, loud machines. William's relationship with his youngest son appears to have been distant at best. The child was afraid, crying constantly, unable to enjoy the very thing William had built his career on. There is no evidence William tried to comfort his son or understand his fears. Instead, the boy was pushed into situations that terrified him, forced to attend parties at locations he dreaded. The crying child spent his short life in fear. He saw nightmarish visions of the animatronics, their mouths opening impossibly wide, their eyes glowing in the dark. Whether these were dreams, hallucinations, or genuine supernatural encounters is unclear. What is clear is that this child's entire existence was coloured by terror, and then his own brother killed him, not intentionally, but through cruel thoughtlessness. Michael's prank with Fredbear's mouth ended in tragedy. The crying child's skull was crushed, his brain was exposed. He lingered in a coma for days while his family watched, powerless. In those final moments, the crying child heard a voice. His Fredbear plush toy, which had seemed to comfort him throughout his life, spoke with a different voice. "I will put you back together," it said. This promise was never fulfilled in the way it seemed to suggest. The child died. His body was buried. But his soul, like so many others, did not rest. The prevailing theory is that the crying child became Golden Freddy, or part of Golden Freddy, sharing the suit with Cassidy from the missing children incident. This would explain Golden Freddy's unique behaviour, appearing and disappearing, manifesting in ways the other animatronics cannot. Two souls in one suit, one a murdered child seeking revenge, the other a terrified boy still crying in the darkness. William's reaction to his son's death shaped everything that followed. Some believe this tragedy drove him to study Remnant, to find a way to bring his son back, or at least understand what happened to his consciousness. Others believed William was already experimenting before the bite of 83, and his son's death was merely another data point. Either way, the crying child's death marked the moment the Afton family began to truly fracture. Michael was consumed with guilt. Elizabeth grew up in a household shadowed by loss, and William descended further into obsession. Elizabeth Afton was described as having green eyes and orange hair, matching Circus Baby's design. This was not coincidence. William designed Circus Baby with his daughter in mind, creating an animatronic that would appeal to Elizabeth specifically. Whether this was a loving father trying to make something special for his daughter, or a manipulative monster using his child's preferences to perfect his killing machine, is open to interpretation. Elizabeth wanted nothing more than to see Circus Baby. She begged her father to let her visit the animatronic, but William forbade it. He knew what Circus Baby could do. He had designed the capture mechanism himself. He understood that allowing Elizabeth near the animatronic was tantamount to murder. But children do not always obey, and Elizabeth found her moment when William was distracted or absent. She approached Circus Baby alone. The animatronic's programming did exactly what it was designed to do. It lured Elizabeth close with promises of ice cream and treats. It activated the grabbing mechanism. It pulled her inside. Elizabeth Afton died inside Circus Baby's stomach compartment, crushed and suffocated by metal claws. Her death was instant, or near enough. One moment she was a living child, excited to finally see her favourite animatronic up close. The next moment she was gone, her body hidden inside the machine her father had built. But Elizabeth's story did not end with her death. Like the other children, her soul possessed the animatronic that killed her. She became Circus Baby, her consciousness merging with the AI programming and mechanical systems. This fusion created something unique. Elizabeth retained her memories, her personality, even her love for her father. Circus Baby, speaking with Elizabeth's voice, would later claim, "I wanted to see her," and "there was one inside already." This cryptic dialogue suggests that Baby's AI may have had some form of awareness or desire, and that Elizabeth's possession completed something the animatronic had been seeking. Elizabeth's existence as Circus Baby was tragic in a different way than the other possessed animatronics. She knew who she was, she understood what had happened, she was aware of being trapped in a machine, but she did not rage against it. She did not seek revenge on her father. Instead, she seemed to accept her new existence, even embrace it. This could be explained by Elizabeth being younger and more innocent than some of the other victims, less able to comprehend the horror of her situation. Or it could be that William's influence over his daughter persisted even in death. His manipulation of her affections, creating a ghost that still loved her murderer. Michael Afton, the oldest child, carried the heaviest burden. He killed his younger brother through a prank gone wrong. He lived with that guilt every day. And eventually his father sent him into the sister location facility, where he died in the scooping room and became a purple, rotting corpse animated by supernatural forces. Michael's transformation into an undead being gave him a purpose. He would fix what his family had broken. He would find William and stop him. He would free the spirits trapped in animatronics. He would end the cycle. This mission led Michael to take jobs at various Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations. He worked as a night guard, using false names, investigating the possessed animatronics, searching for clues about his father's whereabouts and activities. The player in several Five Nights at Freddy's games is believed to be Michael, including the first game's protagonist. Michael was hunted by the same animatronics he was trying to help. The possessed spirits could not tell him apart from William. They saw only another adult, another potential killer, so they attacked him night after night, trying to stuff him into suits, trying to kill him. But Michael could not die. He was already dead, a walking corpse held together by remnant. The logs Michael left behind, particularly in the sister location game, reveal a man who understood his mission and accepted his fate. "I'm going to come find you," he said, addressing his father. His voice was tired but determined. He'd been searching for years, surviving horrors that would have broken anyone else. Michael Afton represents the possibility of redemption. He made a terrible mistake as a teenager, bullying his younger brother into a deadly accident. But he spent the rest of his existence trying to atone. He hunted his father. He attempted to free the trapped spirits. He willingly walked into danger again and again, knowing he might finally be destroyed, but accepting that risk if it meant stopping William. The Afton family tragedy is not just about William's crimes. It is about how those crimes rippled outward, destroying everyone connected to him. His wife vanished. His youngest son died in an accident caused by family dysfunction. His daughter was killed by a machine William designed. His oldest son became an undead hunter, tormented by guilt and driven by desperate need for redemption. Every member of the Afton family paid the price for William's obsessions, and their suffering did not end with death. The crying child's soul remained trapped, afraid, and confused. Elizabeth's soul remained trapped, loving her father even from inside a killing machine. Michael's consciousness remained trapped in a rotting body, unable to rest until William was stopped. The Afton family also represents the central theme of Five Nights at Freddy's, the persistence of trauma. Death does not end suffering in this universe. It transforms it, extends it, makes it eternal. The family that was broken in life remained broken in death, each member caught in their own personal hell. William's hell was Springtrap, his genius and ambition reduced to scraps of rotten flesh inside a decaying rabbit costume, forced to experience the slow agony he had inflicted on others. The crying child's hell was Golden Freddy, forever reliving the fear of animatronics, forever crying in the darkness, unable to move forward. Elizabeth's hell was Circus Baby, her love for her father twisted into loyalty to the machine that killed her, unable to see the monster he had become. Michael's hell was his undead body, rotting but conscious, hated by the spirits he tried to help, hunting a father who might already be beyond reach. The Afton family tree is a diagram of tragedy. Each branch leads to death. Each connection is tainted by William's crimes, and the roots, buried deep in remnant and supernatural forces, keep the family bound together even when every member wants nothing more than to be free. After decades of tragedy, After countless deaths and possessions and hauntings, someone finally decided to end it. Not with violence or exorcism, but with fire and deception. Henry Emily, the co-founder who had lost his daughter to William Afton's first murder, came out of hiding with a plan. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, released as what appeared to be a light-hearted restaurant management game, was actually the finale of Henry's elaborate trap. It represented his final attempt to gather all the possessed animatronics, all the remnant, all the souls that William had corrupted into one location, and then burn it all. The game takes place sometime after the Fazbear's Fright fire. William survived that blaze as Springtrap, escaping into the world, but Springtrap's body was damaged, burned, barely functional. The suit was falling apart. William's rotting corpse inside was exposed in places. He was a shambling ruin, but still conscious, still driven by his obsessions. Springtrap eventually found itself inside another Freddy Fazbear's location, the one the player builds and manages in Pizzeria Simulator. But this location was different from all the others. It was not a real restaurant trying to make money. It was a trap designed specifically to lure William Afton and the other possessed animatronics to one place. Henry Emily orchestrated everything. He created the front of a new pizzeria, advertised it, made it seem legitimate. He knew the possessed animatronics would be drawn to any Fazbear Entertainment location. He knew William, as Springtrap would be unable to resist investigating. The restaurant was bait. The management simulation was a facade. The true purpose was gathering targets for extermination. Throughout the week, the player manages the restaurant. Animatronics begin appearing in the alleyway behind the building. These are not ordinary animatronics. They are the remnants of William's experiments, each carrying pieces of the story that led to this moment. Molten Freddy is what remained of NR after it evacuated Michael's body. The combined mass of fun-time animatronic endoskeletons, now fused into a chaotic tangle of wires and metal, still animated by the remnant within it. This animatronic represents the sister location disaster, the death of Elizabeth and the scooping of Michael. Scrap Baby is what Circus Baby became after being ejected from Menard. Elizabeth's soul still resides in this animatronic, but the body has been rebuilt from scraps and garbage. She is damaged, desperate, but still her father's daughter. She still loves William even after everything, even knowing what he is. Lefty appears to be a black bear animatronic, a variation on Freddy Fazbear. But inside Lefty is the puppet, and inside the puppet is Charlotte Emily's soul. Henry designed Lefty specifically to capture and contain the puppet, to bring his daughter's spirit to the final location. This was not cruelty, but mercy. Henry wanted to free his daughter, and he knew the only way was to end the possession entirely. And finally, Scraptrap. This is William Afton in a new form. After the Fazbear's Fright fire destroyed much of the Springtrap suit, William apparently rebuilt himself using spare parts from other animatronics. His skull is partially exposed, showing bone and rotted flesh. His costume is a patchwork of rabbit parts. He's held together by little more than willpower and remnant. But he is still William Afton, still hunting for more secrets about immortality, still unable to stop even in his ruined state. These four animatronics, drawn to the new Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, represent the core of the tragedy. William, the killer. Elizabeth, his daughter. Charlotte, Henry's daughter. And Molten Freddy, containing remnant from multiple sources, including possibly some of the original missing children. The player, working as the manager and nighttime security, must survive their approaches each night. During the day, the player runs the restaurant, buying attractions and animatronics to increase revenue. But this is all theatre. The real purpose is to keep the location running until all the targets have arrived. On the final night, after the player has completed their tasks, Henry Emily's voice comes through the speakers. He has been silent throughout the game, letting automated systems guide the player. But now he reveals himself and his plan. The monologue Henry delivers is one of the most important pieces of dialogue in the entire franchise. Henry addresses each animatronic by name or association. He speaks to his daughter, trapped in the puppet. He speaks to Elizabeth in Scrap Baby. He speaks to the unnamed souls in Molten Freddy. And he speaks to William, the man who destroyed both their lives. "I am remaining as well," Henry says. "I am nearby." He explains that the building has been designed as a trap. The exits are blocked, the rooms are sealed, and the entire structure is rigged to burn. He has lured them here not to contain them, but to destroy them. To release the souls through fire and end the cycle of haunting that has persisted for decades. Henry's plan is based on the logic that fire can destroy Remnant. If the possessed animatronics burn completely, if their metal bodies are reduced to ash and their remnant is consumed by the flames, the souls should finally be free to move on. It is not guaranteed. It is a theory. But after so many years of failure, of watching spirits suffer in mechanical prisons, Henry is willing to try anything. "This ends for all of us," he says. His voice is tired, resigned. He has lived too long with guilt and grief. Charlotte's death, the Mrs. Children, the decades of tragedy at locations bearing his name and designs. He could have stopped William earlier if he had seen the signs. He could have prevented so much suffering, but he did not. And now the only way to end it is to burn everything, himself included. "End communication," Henry says, and the fire begins. The Pizzeria Simulator location burns. The flames consume the animatronics, melting metal and burning away the last remnants of fabric and plastic. Molten Freddy, Scrap Baby, Lefty and Scraptrap are all caught in the blaze. There is no escape. The exits are sealed. The building has become a crematorium. Henry Emily dies in the fire he set. He remains in the building to ensure the job is complete, sacrificing himself to end the nightmare he helped create. His death is deliberate, an act of atonement for failing to protect his daughter and failing to stop his partner. Charlotte's soul, the puppet, burns. After years of trying to help the other children's spirits, after years of keeping the music box wound and maintaining some fragment of order in the chaos, she is finally released. Henry's plan was to free her specifically, to give his daughter peace at last. Whether he succeeds is left ambiguous, but the intention is clear. Elizabeth's soul burns in Scrap Baby. She dies again. This time permanently based on Henry's hopes. Her final moments are spent in the building her father is also dying in, the twisted family reunion ending in shared destruction. The souls in Molten Freddy burn. How many children's spirits were contained in that tangled mass of wires is unclear, but each one, if Henry's plan works, is finally freed from the machines that have held them for so long. And William Afton burns. Scraptrap is consumed by flames, the rabbit suit disintegrating, the rotted flesh inside cremating. William Afton's physical form is destroyed completely. Nothing remains but ash. After surviving so much, after escaping death time and again through remnant and possession, William Afton is finally killed. Or so it seems. The problem with Remnant is that it does not obey normal rules. Fire might destroy the physical containers, but does it destroy the consciousness attached to that remnant? Can souls truly be freed, or do they persist in some other form? These questions haunt the ending of Pizzeria Simulator. Henry believed he was ending the story. He believed that by gathering all the possessed animatronics and burning them together, he could finally close the book on Freddy Fazbear's pizza. The final screen of the game shows a gravestone for each main character, suggesting peace at last. But Five Nights at Freddy's is not a story that ends easily. The franchise continued beyond Pizzeria Simulator, suggesting that something survived the fire, and the most likely candidate is William Afton, whose consciousness proved more persistent than anyone imagined. Pizzeria Simulator was meant to be the end, the final chapter, the resolution to decades of tragedy. It was Henry's last stand against the monster he had partnered with, the friend who had betrayed everything their company stood for. It was a father trying to free his daughter's soul and a creator trying to destroy his creations. The fire burned. The souls were released or destroyed. The story should have ended. But endings in this franchise are never quite final. The past refuses to stay buried. The remnant refuses to dissipate completely. And William Afton, even reduced to ash, found a way to persist. Because some ghosts cannot be exorcised, some monsters cannot be killed, some stories cannot end until every last trace of evil is burned away, and there was still one more chapter to tell.